This Thing Called Life is a podcast dedicated to exploring the twists, turns, and transformative moments that shape our lives and the lives of others. It is a space where we can share our experiences so we can learn, grow, and empower change. You're listening to This Thing Called Life. I am your host, Atlas. Today, our guest is Ji Hyang Padma. Ji Hyang is a Zen teacher, Buddhist chaplain, and educator who has spent more than 20 years accompanying people through life's thresholds, from university campuses to hospital bedsides. She's the founder of the Maitreya Association for Buddhist Campus Chaplains, a professor of wisdom traditions, and a devoted practitioner of the Soto Zen lineage and earth-honoring traditions. Her work weaves together trauma-informed care, contemplative practice, and a deep belief in the healing power of nature and community. Ji Hyang shares her journey from Zen practice to becoming a Buddhist chaplain and meditation teacher. She discusses the importance of mindfulness, meditation practice, and connecting with nature to foster resilience and well-being. We begin the conversation with her sharing the moment everything shifted, when she was first introduced to Zen practice in college.
Well, when I was a college student myself, and I had a lot of choices to make and all kinds of things going on in my family, I felt really fortunate to come across Zen practice because it helped me to be more in alignment with my own body, mind, and to sort things out using a clear compass of precepts and practice to center in the midst of things. When I graduated from college, I moved right into the Zen Center, and I took jobs to support my meditation practice. One of those jobs was working as an office manager at an acupuncture clinic for people with AIDS, and it was the early 90s, so that was pretty raw. And it also deepened this big question I had about how to help people, a sense of the urgency and that impermanence of life. So at that point, I did a 90-day retreat in Korea. And at the end of that retreat, I ordained as a nun in the Zen tradition. And I came back to America to serve my community. So giving a lot of intense focus to the community was in many ways very satisfying. We were able to build a strong community, and that community continues. In the midst of that, I was sitting another 90-day retreat, and I had this sense of gratitude to my college for having found this very meaningful path. And I thought perhaps I can give something back to the college. I'm not going to be the biggest financial donor, but maybe I can share my community. I can share my practice. And so I went to the school and made that offer. Right then, the school was coming across a new model of chaplaincy in which everyone, all of the different denominational chaplains, were working together as a team to support the spiritual life of the whole college. So that was back in about 1994. I was hoping to get a room for a sitting group, but I actually found myself in a role in the college for 14 years. And that was very satisfying and very creative and meaningful partnership at work. So through that, I discovered this thing called chaplaincy, in which we're working both within a kind of religious context of our own, but then also thinking about the developmental arc of college students, the psychological aspects of the transition that people make from their beginning of life into their adult life, very often through college. And reflecting on that and wanting that to be a good bridge for people so that they do have a meaningful life. So that work then brought me to consider chaplaincy as a vocation in and of itself. And I had taken some time in between my work at Wellesley to focus on the Zen Center and then to move to the high desert of California. And so when I was out there, I found a connection to the land and a spirituality within that touching the earth that I think is in many ways inherent to Buddhism, but sometimes underemphasized. We create such beautiful buildings and structures and altars, but actually the Buddha didn't have that. Buddha was sitting under a tree. His people wandered and practiced in small huts in the forest. So when I had the opportunity to spend time in the desert at a mountain temple there, it brought me back into contact with that kind of archetypal primordial aspect of the practice. I would do chanting for 3 hours a day, chanting the name of the Bodhisattva of compassion. But when I was doing that, there were coyotes and lizards and rabbits and deer that were just outside the window. And I began to see my work and my practice more in relationship with all of those. So I came back to the East Coast and continued the chaplaincy journey. But when I need to recharge myself from this place of giving to the human communities, uh, reconnecting with the more than human world has been intensely valuable. That is what continues
It's
to
the balance
inspire
of
my work.
human and nature. I mean, on one hand, I get this sense of
Yeah,
just honoring being of service to others. How can I be of service to others and other human beings, and in
yeah,
particular, youth, and kids in college that are at this point in life where they're gaining some independence, but also asking questions and questioning things, which is a good thing, and challenging ways of life and ways of being, and making sure that we can hold space for these kids to ask those questions and provide knowledge and care, um, but also in it sounds like over time you started to appreciate nature as far in Buddhism and bring that into your own practice.
yes. And in many ways, that's how Zen especially began. When Buddhism came from India to China and encountered Taoism. In Chinese classic poetry, there's so many beautiful poems about how the poet is watching the fish in the water. And at the twilight, the fish leap up above the water. And as they do that, um, it creates circles upon circles, which then fill the entire pond. And the poet Li Bai ends by saying, "Why should I go out to the Chengling waters? Here by this pond can I as well wash the ribbons of my hat." So the Chengling waters would have been a place to make pilgrimage to. But what Li Bai is saying is you can make pilgrimage right where you are, because the land has everything
The
that
other
we
thing I
need
wanted to talk
right
with you
here and
about
now.
is you put a tremendous amount of time and effort into your practice. There's a regimen, and you're doing a lot of meditation, all these different time periods where you're on these retreats for 90 days, chanting and things like that. Um, is that is that for everyone in everyone's path? And how can people bring in meditation but not necessarily have these like intense retreats?
I think all of us need to incorporate some way of centering for ourselves because if we don't have a way to center in on ourselves, then it's really easy to get caught up in 10,000 things. The world has no shortage of distractions nowadays, right? And if we lose our own compass, our own trajectory, it could be really disconcerting. Um, yeah, but we all have the same basic technology. We all have some way to come back to here, now, and this. And when we ground ourselves in here, now, and this, then we can see clearly, we can hear clearly. And then out of that, um, we can make a good connection, a good relationship to our situation. If someone's hungry, we can give them food. If someone needs directions, we can show them which way to go. So sometimes in Buddhism, we talk about that as the path of great love and compassion, but really it's just our human nature as it functions when it's clear and undisguised. So, for instance, on an everyday level, one way to stop is just to take a few deep breaths through the lungs, through the lower belly, and listen to that river of life as it's moving through us. What's the texture of that? Is the river fast or slow at the moment? Is it even or rough? Does it feel like that river is obstructed any place? And if there is a tightness, can we breathe into that and relax and soften that as well? Um, Breathing all the way through the lower body, making contact with the lower body where we're connected to the ground, and just bringing special awareness to that and relaxing that so that we can totally feel the earth supporting us. When we do that, life unfolds in a different way. We're open to um, the vividness and the full joy of life. And we also have greater resiliency for working with the rushing rivers of life. So that kind of practice, breathing deeply, breathing through the root and relaxing from that place, that's also somatic psychology. Right now, in this point in time, we know a lot more about stress reduction and trauma care than we used to. And part of what we know is that to give a sense of safety in a time of trauma, the body kind of shuts down some of its capacity for making connections. It's focused on survival. But in order for us to get out of survival mode into a place of thriving and active engagement, it's important to undo whatever that particular box is that their survival need has got us boxed into. And there are very trauma sensitive aspects of engaging with
And like a lot of
mindfulness
what I'm
that can
hearing is
help to do that.
acknowledging what we're in control over, right? And engaging. That's sort of a lot of what trauma informed is
Mhm.
about is giving the sense of control, right? And being in control and being aware of what we're in control of and what we're not in control of. And I'm hearing a lot of engaging in our senses, including our senses in some sort of meditation practice. And like breathing through like the base of our spine and connecting with the ground can be like useful techniques. I wanted to see if we could go back to what your experience was like getting introduced to Zen in college, and how
Yeah.
can schools improve including these meditative practices in colleges and universities today?
Um, I think for one thing, nowadays, the students who are coming into college have many more resources than I would have had back then. Because nowadays, when I've taught at a university level, the students come in and they already have meditation apps on their phone, right? So the kind of ubiquity of meditation within the culture makes things a little bit different. The landscape when I started meditation practice was um, basically pre-internet. I mean, it's so hard to fathom, but it's true. So we had to look things up in the old-fashioned way, like using an actual phone book or something. But nowadays, I think that part of the challenge is to create a gateway into meditation when students are at school so that they can connect not only with an app, but with an actual person. Um, we're human beings and we learn in relationship. The Buddhist path has always been transmitted from, we say, from warm hand to warm hand through the intimacy of that connection, that lived experience of one human being that is shared with another human being. That actually helps us. It helps us um, on a deep level because much of what is transmitted directly from right brain to right brain. You know, there's a nervous system attuning to another nervous system. And it's a little bit different if you're just interacting with an app. So having another human being to connect to and to hear about their path into the Dharma and to find out of that, your own authentic path. That, I think when that happens at a university and these liminal spaces, that can be so powerful. Um, Sometimes there are meditation teachers at universities now or Buddhist chaplains, but I would say by and large, most universities don't have that resource. But even if they can have someone come in for a couple hours to do a mindfulness-based stress reduction class, even something simple like that. But then again, if students don't have that, if people have some question, if they have they're feeling a bit weighed down by this 21st century chaos, then they should find for themselves a community of practitioners and really take their time and get to know the community and the teacher as spiritual friends before they make a commitment and make sure that it's their cup of tea. But then once you have gotten clarity about whether this is the path, it's important to go and make a bit of a commitment because meditation is not like a fast food for the mind. It's something that has to evolve over time. If you commit for a month, then after a month you can check, do I feel more focused? Do I feel more clear? Am I grounded? All of those things. When I was first beginning meditation and moved into the Zen Center, I was concerned that waking up early every morning would be difficult because as a college student, I was used to going to bed very late. So I decided just for 1 week, I would skip that one morning of free time and I would keep going so that I would create a good pattern. And after that first week, I said, I did the first week. I should really try doing this without skipping for at least a month to make sure that it set into my nervous system. And then after a month, I was like, okay, we did a month. But in order to really get this into my bones, let's make sure that it's a year. And so I practiced like that and had at least 12 years without missing morning meditation. And that helped it to set into my life on a deeper level than it would if I was just
And I
taking
appreciate
this
you
up
you
like a
taking,
fad.
like, small little bits at a time. Sort of, a lot of times when we set out on something, we think, "Oh, well, we can't do it because we can't do, every day for a year, or I can't meditate because I can't do something for an hour." And it's like, well, we can do something for a minute, or 1 minute every morning, or 1 minute on a Monday morning, and then go from there. And so I think, breaking it up into small bits, is a wonderful way to, for someone to practice meditation.
My teacher, Mahakosananda, who was the patriarch of Cambodian Buddhism, he famously used the phrase kahani kahani, which means step by step. Like you just take this one step and then you just take another step. So the meditation group that I run now is called Step by Step. And so we say we can't solve the problems of the world today, but maybe we can just take one more
What is
step
a
toward that
what is a
goal.
challenge, bringing, these practices at universities?
I think nowadays part of the challenge is that people are so overwhelmed and overscheduled. Sometimes it can feel as if it's one more thing. I think what is really necessary for teaching meditation on a college level to be compelling, you need not only to have insight and compassion, but also skillful means to adapt the practice to the energy and inclinations of college students. And also, it's important to create a network of spiritual friendship within that community because college students are very relationship centered. So, if you have a good network of spiritual friends established and then also teach in innovative ways, it can be very joyful and powerful. So, for instance, when I've taught at Northeastern and Tufts University, we might engage with art as a way of practicing meditation. We might work with brushstrokes that are attuned to the breath or approaching the piece of paper with beginner's mind and just experimenting. Then there's also practices that we have in which we've made sushi together as an act of mindful awareness, or we engage in a body scan as a way to love the body unconditionally and come home to it. And that can be an act of taking back power, especially for young women who have so many body image things. Um, it's rife within our culture right now. And then there are also ways in which we often benefit from doing chanting together because the act of chanting together, it brings people into the place of a shared breath. The word conspire literally means to breathe together. So when people are chanting together, their limbic system is engaged with others' limbic system and attuned that way so that the energy in the room, feeling your nervous system attuned to by other nervous systems, that is very regulating in a healthy way, kind of restores balance, restores a felt sense of relational connection and safety. And then it also helps us to focus our mind and direct it towards compassion. So that's why I really favor these engaged mind body practices. Another thing that I often do is what's called Sun Yu, which is breathing meditation. Just like breathing in, like so, breathing out. As we breathe out, moving the arms in connection with the breath. And as we do that, and attend to the out breath, the breath becomes deeper. As the breath becomes deeper, the body relaxes, and as the body relaxes, the mind relaxes. Um, Even if people have been in a place of disconnection or dysregulation, these kind of exercises can bring them back home
Especially
pretty
with the
efficiently.
breath. I mean, it's always there. It's always with us. And attuning to our breath, breathing in, holding, breathing out. The other thing I wanted to quickly ask you is if someone was curious about chanting, what's sort of like a small step that they can take to start practicing chanting?
I think the best way to practice chanting is by going to a Zen center and chanting together. There are recordings. Nowadays, I have some of those recordings, I think, on my website, um, which is www.mountainpath.org. Um, but it's really lovely to have the felt experience of practicing together in the same room. So that's what I would suggest is find a community and then just jump in. The chanting is
The
something
other
that
thing
we
I
learn
want
by doing.
to shift over to is nature, because I know um, that's an important part of your upcoming workshop at Omega, which is touching the earth, and it includes a lot of nature. Do you want to talk a little bit about your workshop and what it is?
Yeah, I'm going to be teaching with the very wonderful Rochelle Calvert, a Vipassana teacher who is trained as a therapist and also feels a very strong connection to nature. Um, Rochelle and I discovered that we have a lot in common with regard to our teaching approach, and I wanted to invite Rochelle to Omega because the land there is incredible. I think that even before Omega was founded in those Indian, the Indian cultural ways, the land of Omega was a meeting ground for people of different tribes. And some of the stone piles that are connected to that can still be found in the Omega forest. So I feel that Omega has a great capacity for facilitating transformation. And Rochelle and I will be bringing in some of these meditation practices that intersect with trauma-informed somatic approaches, and at the same time honor
What
and
can some
restore our
folks
connection
expect
to
from
nature.
taking your workshop?
I think they can expect to find a reconnection with their own body, yeah, a reset of our own body-mind system, and that kind of towards wholeness, towards wellness and resilience. And then also finding a felt connection through this to a community of human beings that are sharing the practice. And wider than that, the reunion with the larger community of the more than human world, which in some way is necessary for all of us. Because tapping into the gifts and the beauty and strength of our human community, there will always be times in which our human community together needs a little bit of extra help. Because there's so much intensity and change within our societies, especially in this 21st century. It is totally um, necessary and deeply um, reparative to go into nature and to source from the stones and the trees and these other beings who have a sense of space and time that goes much deeper and longer than our own. We can learn a
Um,
lot
what
from
does
the
it mean to
trees.
include nature in our practice, in your practice? And I heard you say like go into the woods. So, what does that mean exactly?
There's a poem that I sometimes teach with. It's from David Wagoner, and it's actually a poem composed about a story that a Native American elder told their granddaughter about what to do if one finds themselves lost. And it says, "Stand still. The trees ahead and the bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger, must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It says, I have made this place around you. If you lose it, you may come back at any time, saying here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Listen. The forest knows where you are. You must
It's
let it find you."
go ahead. Sometimes
That's
I
a way
I
of
feel
answering your
as though
question.
it can be simply, I mean, you kind of mentioned just going into nature and going on a hike and going into the woods, and it can be as simple as, setting an intention. I have this question, right? So before we go into the woods, I would like some answers. I want to go into the woods and I want to find those answers. And it's sort of like it's similar to the sense of like a mm,
Sorry, hold on.
sure.
Just just one moment.
We had a little visitor.
Okay. What
It's going back
a visitor.
to, it can be as simple as setting an intention going to the woods or going for a hike and setting an intention of, I'm searching for answers to this question, or I want to let go, or I want to receive something from you, nature, and sort of carrying that intention into nature. And it brings me back to a lot of indigenous ways of being and learning. And this and I think you had mentioned it way at the beginning of the interview, a journey. You had gone on a journey. It was a what was the Vision Quest, right? It's very
The
similar
vision
to a Vision
quest.
Quest and what they would have,
Yes.
people do or shamans do, go on a Vision Quest, correct?
Yes. We all have that original operating instruction. We all have that capacity. My teacher, Zen Master Sung San, would say, if you have a question, go ask a mountain or go ask a tree, and the tree will have a good answer. So when I've had big life decisions to make, I go out into the land and I ask the land. Um, in the Irish language, which I've been practicing and studying recently, there are 42 different words for field. Um, because the land was so essential to people's well-being. They knew it very intimately. Because the field depended upon moisture to grow. The Irish language has 99 different words for rain and 1 word for sun. And even in the midst of our modern life, our dependence upon the natural world, the means of that has shifted, but the essential need for that nourishment from the land isn't essentially changed. We can go out on the land in that way and reconnect, cleanse the body mind through bathing in the forest. And through that, rediscover the innate wisdom and resources that we already have. That's the invitation that Rochelle and I are making to folks through this retreat, is to go out on the land and just remember who you are.
You can sign up for Ji Hyang's retreat happening August 16th through the 21st using the link below, or by visiting Omega Institute for Holistic Studies at eomega.org and searching Ji Hyang. She is currently writing a book on contemplative trauma-informed spiritual care. If you enjoyed this episode, you can support the show by liking, sharing, or subscribing wherever you're listening. You can find us online at thisthingcalledlife.center. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit thisthingcalledlife.center/contact. Until next time, thank you for listening and being with us on This Thing Called Life.